Hi, this is Thom Donovan, and you're listening to Rock Paper Podcast.
Rock Paper Podcast.
Scissors beat paper, paper covers rock. Rock beats scissors, Shane covers non-stop. Never know what new kind of guest that he's got coming at you. Live and direct on the spot. Could be rock, folk, country, or hip-hop, jazz. All kind of folks that he has. Could be an artist or a comedian to make you laugh on the
Rock Paper Podcast.
double-decker fudge round, rolling round town. Shane coming at you live and direct from ground zero. He's your hero, he's your bestie. Rock Paper Podcast with Shane Presley.
Rock Paper Podcast.
Hey, everybody. Shane Presley here. Rock Paper Podcast coming to you from St. Louis, Missouri. Hanging out via Zoom with Thom Donovan. Welcome to the show, Tom.
How's it going?
Good, man. This is very cool. You're at your home in Nashville,
Tennessee. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I love it down there. I don't get there as often as I'd like, but always a good time when I'm down in Nashville.
I love Nashville. I've been here for 13 years, and it feels like home.
Yeah.
My son was born here, so yeah, we have some roots here now.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. We maybe, I don't know, several years ago, but there was, we took a trip down there. It was like this Capitol Records block party thing. And it was like a free street party put on by the record company, obviously. And then I was like, got down there early, got my spot. And it was like Alan Jackson, Eric Church, Eric Pasley, and John Party opened up the show. And
oh wow!
And I was like, that's for free. Like that's a hell of a show. So it was a lot of fun, and we had a good time in Nashville that time. And then that's usually the case when I drive down is just for a good show. And I went to one not too long ago. Me and a couple of buddies jumped in the car and drove down for it was like a Canary Ballroom, I think, or something.
Oh,
like
the
that.
Cannery Ballroom.
Or Cannery Ball, yeah.
Yeah.
We went there to see Rival Sons and Tyler Bryant and the Shakedown.
Cool.
And that was another good rock and roll show. And so it's always a lot of entertainment down there, that's for sure.
I wrote songs with Tyler when I first moved to Nashville.
Oh, very cool.
And he had just come to town. I mean, he was super young. He may have even still been in high school. But they had him set up in an apartment here in town, and the publisher that I was writing for at the time, I had a few co-writes with him.
Yeah.
But even at that young in high school, he was already really incredible.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I've been just following him when he was pretty young, pretty early on. So
yeah,
probably around that same era.
I mean, he was already playing gigs with Jeff Beck.
Yeah.
And ZZ Top and John Mayer. And I mean, yeah, I think he was 15 years old or something. So it was pretty crazy.
Right. Yeah. That's it's crazy. It's crazy to think about that. But having Graham Whitford as a good friend, that's a good start too, for sure.
Yeah. And Graham's brother plays with Phoebe Bridgers.
Yeah.
So, and obviously we all know who his father is.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. But yeah, those guys rule, man. I remember seeing them one night in St. Louis here too at a Gramophone. I think they had to bump the date because they end up getting booked on Jimmy Kimmel Live, and but they came back and played Gramophone, and it was like one of the coolest things. Like just to see them in a small club like that, and then like I remember Caleb like jumped off the stage and like was playing drums on took his drumsticks and was playing drums like on everything, like all the bar stools and the floor and all this stuff. And I don't know, it was a neat show.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. So Nashville's home now, but before that, St. Louis and St.Charles, Missouri area was home, right? That's where you grew up most of the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I was born in St. Louis, but I grew up in St. Charles. Went to grade school and high school in St. Charles and college. I graduated from Lindenwood.
Nice. Yeah.
Um,
My mom went to Lindenwood. I don't know. I have a lot of, I was pretty young. I don't know what year it was, but I mean, I think it's pretty crazy that she managed to, she was working at McDonnell Douglas at the time, raising two boys, with my dad, of course, too. But raising two kids and put herself through college. And I was like, I look at it now, like as an adult, and I'm like, I don't know how she did it. I'm glad she did it.
Yeah.
But
yeah. So yeah, St. Charles, I mean, St. Charles was home. But then, once we were old enough to get out and drive ourselves around, of course, we were hanging out in the city. And my friends and I, we all played in bands.
right.
So that's all we did is we would play shows, or we would go see each other's shows. And then we were going downtown and watching shows at Mississippi Nights or the Kennedys, like back when those clubs were still around.
Yeah.
I mean, there was always just an incredible music scene in St. Louis, and it's all we wanted. It's literally all we did is we either rehearsed in a basement, or we played shows, or we would go out to shows. And, growing up in St. Charles, there wasn't a whole lot to do,
Right.
but thankfully, I mean, there was such a vibrant music scene in St. Louis. And then, there was just the pull to the city. Growing up in the suburbs, and the city was just different, and it was exciting. So we'd hang out down on Del Mar. I mean, that's really the main place we would go and hang out, down in the Loop. But a lot of the shows were down on the Landing,
Right.
which is really sad to see what it's like now.
Yeah.
Because those were incredible venues.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I don't know, I've talked about a bunch, but like I missed out on like the that whole Mississippi Nights era and stuff. Like I didn't really have like anybody in my life, an older brother or cousin or somebody that was like taking me to shows younger. So it wasn't until like really like after high school when I started really like going to a lot more shows on my own. So yeah, I missed out. So I graduated 2003 from high school. So
Okay.
like I think Mississippi Nights closed like 05 or something like that, maybe somewhere in there. So
Yeah, I mean, around there, because Lapush played there a few times, and I can't remember if the last time we played there was 05 or 04. But it wasn't too long after that it closed.
Yeah. But yeah, I remember hearing story, I've had a bunch of our friends on the show over the years doing this podcast, and a lot of great stories about bands playing there, from the Urge and all the locally, and then of course of all the other bands that got their start early on playing there, and so it was fun to hear that the legacy, I guess, even though and now it's like, there's a nice book. Garrett Enlow wrote a nice book about it all, and so
I bought it. I bought it. I mean, so my band in high school opened for the Urge.
Yeah.
And that was the Mississippi Night. I don't think they had a record deal yet, but they were already selling out Mississippi Nights. So like that was a big deal at the time. That was kind of the pinnacle. If you could get a gig at Mississippi Nights, and especially if you could either open for the Urge or Pale Divine.
Yeah.
Those were and Fragile Porcelain Mice. Those were the bands to try to get on those bills, because they always sold it out. And it was wild. I mean, being a kid and walking on that stage, and there's 1,000 people in front of you, and you're used to being in the crowd.
Right.
And so I'd never seen it from that perspective before, because we were playing clubs, like smaller clubs, but, maybe a few hundred people. the good thing about having a band in high school is everybody comes out to the show.
Sure. Yeah.
So they were always packed, and we were friends with all the other high schools around St. Charles. And so you would, have 3 or 4 different high schools, all these kids from 3 or 4 different high schools coming out to your show. So like you just had this massive crowd built in.
Yeah.
But it was nothing like playing at Mississippi Nights in front of 1,000 people. I mean, that was just, it was surreal. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, I think back a lot about I had some buddies. I mean, really, that's how I even started doing this show. I had friends at high school bands that went on to start playing a lot of original music, and started going supporting them at shows. Down to Pops and different stuff. But that's kind of where the all started for me as a fan of music, and then starting to want to talk about music. And, but I remember like, it was just exciting that your friends were doing something cool like that, like in the band. And like we'd pack out, they had out here in Wentzville, the Midwest Music Pit, and we'd fill it up with a bunch of our friends on a Friday night and stuff. And it was just like exciting to go out and support your friends. And then it's like, I don't know, something switches where like, as people start getting older, it's like, it's so difficult to get them to care about, what you're doing sometimes. Like it's, until you hit like real big, but, it's a weird, shift and everything where like, oh, you're still doing that, music thing, huh? Like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
But, I don't know. It's so that's kind of a bummer, but it is cool when everybody's like super pumped about getting out there to see you, and like so. But yeah, I missed out. I never had a high school band, never played an instrument, never got to go to Mississippi Nights, but it's fun to hear all these rock and roll stories for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was
it was
the band that opened for the Urge. Was that Lapush, or was that a different?
No, it was a band called Midlife, which is a really great band name for a high school, kids in high school. But my brother was in the band with me, and he and I formed Lapush.
Yeah.
But there were a few bands in between that high school band and Lapush. But with the high school band, I mean, I always took music seriously. So, when I had that band together, we were going to get a record deal and we were going to go on tour. And that was that was the goal. Like I was always serious about it from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And, that band, we did okay around St. Louis. And then, we drove all the way to New York and played the CMJ festival up there. And so we kind of got out of St. Louis a little bit. And again, we were just teenagers. We had no idea what we were doing, but just hopping in a car and, I mean, it's not even like we had a van or a trailer or any sort of proper touring thing. It was just like pack everything in a car, drive to New York, and we played CMJ. My brother met Courtney Love in a shoe store. Yeah. I think we were somewhere in the East Village, and it was incredible. It was the greatest experience, and that. So the band. I mean, we never signed a record deal or anything like that, but we had all these experiences of opening for bigger bands, kind of playing outside of our hometown, meeting some people. We ended up signing with we signed with Peter Carson, who managed Pale Divine. And that for me kind of opened a doorway into all of these other avenues where I started doing guitar work for him out of the studio in his house. And that turned into these other gigs playing with other bands outside of St. Louis. And then Midlife ended up just sort of going away. And then, but my brother and I always carried on writing and recording music.
Right. Yeah.
But
What?
so after midlife, I went to college. But while I was in college, I was doing sessions for Peter. And then he ended up putting me in touch with a group from England, a band called Phono. And then I started playing guitar for them. And that was the first time I was playing in a signed band. And I mean, we were touring all over the world. And I jumped ahead. I mean, I'm 22 at this point.
Right. What, so when did you ever have a real job, or has music pretty much been your job since you were in high school?
No, that's it. I mean, I worked at,
not that music's not a real job. I'm sorry, not to phrase it like
no,
that.
I know what you mean though.
Right.
No, I mean, so I worked at, there was a great guitar store in St. Charles called the St.Charles Guitar Exchange.
Yeah.
And I worked there. I started working there when I was really young. I was probably maybe 18, 19 years old, teaching guitar lessons. And then I'd work the sales floor. And it didn't seem like a job.
Right.
And so all the bands, like all the big bands that would come through, that's the guitar store that they would go to. So everybody, I mean, Rolling Stones, U2, REM, all these bands bought guitars from the store.
Oh, wow.
And so I got to meet a bunch of really cool people. The owner of the store one time sold a vintage bass to Mike Mills from REM. And REM were touring on the Monster Tour, and Radiohead were opening, because Radiohead, The Bends was the album at the time. And the owner, Dan, knew I was a huge REM fan, and they're playing out at Riverport. And he said, "You want to deliver this bass to REM?" And gave me the instructions to drive around backstage. And so I said, "Yeah, I mean, I can't believe this. This is incredible." So I drive over there, and I'm, walking backstage. I tell the people who I am. They send me through, and they said, "Well, the band's on stage sound checking. You could just go up and hang out while they finish." So I sat on a road case on Peter Buck's side of the stage, and there's REM having their sound check, and Michael Stipe is just walking around. The band is playing, he's not singing. And he looks over at me, and I mean, it's probably obvious that I'm out of place. I mean, my jaw's probably on the floor.
Right.
And he walks over to me and introduces himself. He says, "Hi, my name's Michael." I said, "Hi, I'm Tom." And he sat on the road case next to me, and Michael Stipe and me watched REM sound check.
Nice. That's wild, man.
So that, I mean, that was, that was my job all the way through college.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I began touring with Phono, I would just come back and work shifts at that job, so in between runs. But yeah, I mean, music has been, that's been everything.
Yeah.
It's been how, I mean, it's all I've ever wanted to do. I mean, when I first picked up a guitar, I just knew instantly.
Yeah.
I was
just thinking, like, I mean, that's just really cool to hear as a fan, and just as, enjoying what you guys are doing, because to hear that you knew that young, like, and decided, like, I'm going to make this my life, like, and it's paid off, like, it's just, I don't know, that I just find that really cool. Like, cause I'm pushing 40, and I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do with my life. So, but to know that young, that catch the bug, I guess, the itch, that make this music your life. So that's cool.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was really young when I was 12 years old when I got an electric guitar. I mean, I had a guitar when I was maybe 3 or 4 years old, like a little toy plastic guitar. But I mean, I wasn't playing it. I was just sort of banging around on it. But when I was 12, all of my friends were skaters, and I wanted a skateboard. And that's all we would do is just, go to the park, listen to punk rock music. And my friends would ride around on skateboards. And so I wanted a skateboard. And I remember going to the skateboard shops with my mom and looking at the boards, looking at the trucks and the wheels, and you could kind of customize everything. And she had a lot of anxiety about me riding around on a skateboard.
Yeah.
And so she suggested, how about a guitar? And I said, instead of a skateboard? And she said, yeah. And I said, sure, why not? And so we just looked at the JCPenney catalog and picked out a guitar. And it's like I didn't seek it, but it found me. I mean, all of my friends, I didn't have a friend that played an instrument. No one in my family played an instrument. So my whole world was just hanging out in the park. My friends are riding a skateboard. And music was always everybody was into music, but nobody was playing an instrument.
Mm-hmm.
So it was this weird kind of accident. And, but the minute I put the guitar in my lap, like, I'm not exaggerating when I say this, but I can't remember not being able to play it. The minute it was in my lap, I felt like if somebody showed me something, I can play it.
Yeah.
And I had another friend that lived down the street who played guitar. And he had just started playing, but he showed me the very beginning of Johnny Be Good. And that's the first thing that I learned. But from that point on, I couldn't get enough of it. I would sit and I would try to learn songs, and if I couldn't play it, it would make me so angry, and I wouldn't leave my room until I could play it. Like, I remember trying to figure things out on a record. I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know how to tune it. I didn't know what the chords were. And, I'm trying to figure out what Jimi Hendrix is doing, but I can't play an A chord, but I just kept sort of fumbling away at it, but I just fell in love with it immediately. It never seemed like practice to me. My parents didn't have to tell me to practice. Mm-hmm. I would just sit in my room for hours and hours with a guitar in my hands. And I loved it. I mean, it was a little bit of like, it's a little bit of an escape, that the thing happens where time disappears and nothing else is going on around you except what's happening on this record in front of you.
Right.
And then when you're trying to recreate it, I didn't know what a distortion pedal was or a fuzz pedal. And so this harmony guitar plugged into this amp, and it was just, the amp would kind of distort because the speaker was really small. But I could listen to what the Beatles were doing or Jimi Hendrix. Like, I had no idea how they reproduced it all, but I was going to try to figure it out.
Yeah. I think there's still I just saw interview with Keith Richards talking about, the new Stones record and stuff. And they were bringing up different things like from classic, early songs and stuff. And he was, I think, what was it? I don't remember now which track it was, but he was talking about, everybody thinks it's an electric guitar, but it's actually an acoustic. And
Street Fighting Man.
Yeah. So there it is. Yeah. And it's just like, I just think that's cool to find out, like, that he shares the secrets that, he just turned it up and distorted it and stuff. But it was cool to hear like those kind of stories and about how creating some of our favorite classic rock records and stuff. And then picturing you trying to figure it out as a young man. So
yeah.
But it was also interesting to hear, like, so I think it was Satisfaction. He's talking about, like, he played that original lick. Keith said he heard it as a horn arrangement and played it as a guitar part, and then that stuck as that became the song. And then I guess Otis Redding recorded it later and put it back in as horn parts and on his version of it. So I thought that was fun to hear that story too. So.
Well, in Satisfaction, that's the riff that he sort of woke up from his sleep and recorded into a cassette recorder.
Yeah.
And then fell back asleep. And when he woke up the next day and played it back, like after you hear the riff, it's just like 40 minutes or so of him just snoring.
Yeah. But yeah, that was this stuff's crazy to think about though. Like, just like, but those guys had to get innovative, I guess, in a sense, like at the time, like they didn't have all the effects that we have today, obviously.
No.
So you had to find ways to make that weird noise that you've been trying to figure out. So,
yeah.
But yeah, I think that's,
so what's interesting about that is, he heard it as a horn and then obviously it became this iconic guitar riff. And that's kind of has been my experience with music is, as a kid, I was trying to figure out what was happening on these records. And sometimes you get it right, sometimes you get it wrong, and then there's a little bit in between. But it's the parts where you get it wrong, where you kind of develop you figure out your own way to play. And then you come up with your own sound because you don't have the collection of pedals that they have. And at that young, I didn't even know what that was.
Right.
But so I just sort of, I was by not being able to play like Hendrix, but attempting to, I ended up playing like me.
Sure.
And so by the failure creates something new, and I didn't realize it at the time. It's only in hindsight because at the time I'm so pissed off that I can't, when I try to play Purple Haze, it doesn't sound anything like what I'm hearing on the record. And I have no idea why. I don't know what a Fender Stratocaster is. I don't know what a fuzz pedal is or, anything. I don't know any of that. But that's kind of a neat thing is you kind of find your own voice in not being successful at sounding like someone else. And then eventually, then I got really addicted to that, really just wanting to sound like me.
Yeah.
And that made it a lot easier too, because you could get rid of the frustration of trying to, because you have this goal, you're trying to learn how to play. It's like friends of mine that were riding skateboards, like they were always working on this new trick, or they'd see someone else do this trick. And so you're just trying over and over and over again to complete the trick. And that's kind of how the guitar was for me.
Yeah. When does songwriting enter the picture? I mean, obviously guitar pretty young, but when do you decide that you'd like to start writing your own songs?
Right away.
Yeah.
Like right off the bat. So I just immediately, I was always kind of writing, it's a little embarrassing to talk about, but when I was a kid, I used to just sort of imagine myself this is before I played guitar, but I would imagine myself on a stage, or I'd make up, bands or draw fake album covers in a notebook, and so when I had the guitar, I would start writing lyrics out in a notebook, and especially once someone showed me the basic chords, I started taking guitar lessons. And once I learned the basic chords, just, C, A minor, G, and just someone said, you could essentially take 3 or 4 chords and write 100 songs with just these chords. I just started doing all kinds of combinations of those chords. And I wasn't doing anything fancy, but just playing through those chords, kind of humming a melody, writing words down in a notebook. And so that was right from the get-go, because again, being unsuccessful at, I couldn't make myself sound like Jimi Hendrix. And so I just, I was kind of balancing my time between trying to figure out how to play Hendrix, but also sometimes I would just sit and I would play through chord progressions for hours in different combinations, different strumming patterns, different rhythms, and then just kind of hum a little tune on top.
Yeah.
So the guitar and the songs were always there from the beginning. And I think too, my dad didn't play any instruments, but he had a huge record collection, and he was a DJ too. So he had a really,
like on radio or like,
no, he would DJ weddings and parties. Okay. So he had this really great vinyl collection, and his favorite sound was Motown. He loved soul music, R&B, but specifically Motown. And so he had all the old Motown records. He even had before they were called Motown, Gordy Records and Tamla Records. And he had some of those titles. And he knew a lot about how those records were made, how different musicians would be brought in or different songwriters. He would always talk about how, Smokey Robinson was in the Miracles, but then he also wrote songs for the other artists on Motown. Right. And that was kind of the first time I was sort of learning about all these different roles in music and making records. You had a producer, a songwriter, you had an artist. It was all just magic to me, but hearing all these stories. And so Motown, obviously songs are the most important thing. So even at a very young age, great songs were always playing around the house. It was Diana Ross and the Supremes, the Temptations, Stevie Wonder, which is nothing but great songs, great beats. Mm-hmm. And so when the guitar came along, it was just the song and the guitar. That was it. Yeah. And then like when I got to high school, I would have friends that played guitar too. And there were different kinds of guitar players. Like there were the guitar players that wanted to do like almost like the skateboarding trick, but like guitar. But it was just like all this sort of flashy stuff. And I was drawn to that too, because you're just trying to push yourself and what can I accomplish on the guitar? But the song was still just sort of there at the same time, so yeah, it was never like I played guitar for a few years and then I started writing songs. It happened simultaneously.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. That's one thing. Like I wish I should probably hold myself accountable and apply myself and actually do it. But like, it's just something I admire a lot. Songwriting is a big part of my life. I love the greats, but also locally, I have a lot of fun. For 3 years, right up till March of 2020, I was hosting a songwriter showcase with like kind of the three writers on stools with guitars doing
the round,
doing that, and it was a lot of fun, and so it's just like something I'm really passionate about as a fan and listening to music, and but I often wish I would be able to channel that creativity and put it into my own songs, and that's something like I really like. I don't know. I feel like there's, as much as I talk about it and I'm like, that I have this like idea about it, I feel like I need to just do it, but I haven't done it. So it's like, it's kind of like whenever I do go, like when I have sat down to try to like write, it's just like everybody else's songs. Cause like all I listen to is, music all day. So it's like everybody else's lyrics start coming out. So
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard for me to shut off that and actually write my original thoughts, I guess. So, but that's, I don't know. I would, that's definitely a goal of mine someday. Like it'd be fun to, it's like a bucket list, I guess, for me, for like having somebody write a song and have somebody record it for me someday or something like that. So,
well, I mean, but so what's interesting about the podcast is, I mean, whether it's a book or a song, I mean, it's all just telling stories. And so you're just telling stories to the podcast too.
Yeah. It definitely is a different format. Yeah, for sure. I get that. And I love being creative with this. I love doing the show. It allows me to, but be able to share other people's stories and, but yeah, it's just fun to get creative in different mediums, and that's one I haven't got into yet, but that's definitely a goal of mine. So, but you mentioning the book, and maybe that's a good time to plug it in. So songwriting's always been there, but you've recently kind of shifted gears, and you wrote a novel, and we got a big signing and everything happening here locally in St. Charles, Missouri. And so let's talk about how this, like, where does the idea even start to, hey, I've been doing music, all this stuff. Like, I want to write a book now. Like, take me back to that conversation with yourself. And
well, I mean, just going back to, the notebook where I would write band names and album covers and song lyrics in. I used to write little stories when I was a kid too. And so I've always been fascinated by just thinking of stories, thinking of characters. And when I got to college, I majored in music, but I was sort of thinking about being an English major, and I thought, I had read somewhere that Sting taught English. I mean, before he was Sting. And I thought, well, that would be an interesting life. I love books. I love reading. I love telling stories. And so, but I was already into the music program at Lindenwood. And I sort of felt like I didn't want to start over again. So I abandoned the idea, but I was working on a novel at the time. And it was sort of a really terrible plagiarized version of The Catcher in the Rye. And and so I had this sort of Holden Caulfield like character. And of course I was at the right age for, just thinking a lot about, I mean, I was a teenager and just, kind of had this idea for this sort of kind of angsty coming of age character based on Holden Caulfield, but I was just retelling that same story. And so I just abandoned it, which was a good thing, but like that was the first attempt at it. And then over the years of writing songs, I mean, a lot of times I'll write longer pieces and then that's what I'll pull song lyrics from. But the tricky thing about song lyrics is you have a vocal melody to fit them to. And so you only have so many syllables to work with. And so, that's the difficult part of it, is trying to tell a story with only, maybe you have a vocal melody that only has 4 syllables. Mm-hmm. So what can I say? I mean, that limitation in itself creates a unique way of being able to say things. But the longer form has always kind of been there, sort of nagging at me. And then when COVID happened, the whole music industry shut down. Well, the whole world shut down, right? Obviously. But with music, it requires performing live in front of buildings with large groups of people. So obviously that was not going to happen anymore.
Right.
And so everything shut down, and, we weren't touring or doing sessions, or, just work was just, everything, there was just nothing. And, in those early days, people were, we were all just trying to figure out what to do. People were getting on Instagram and baking bread, or there were people like, reading to kids, and, people were trying all of these interesting ways of coping
Right.
with the world shutting down. So I would go into this room that I'm in, which is where I write and record primarily. And I had this idea of just these characters. I just had these characters bouncing around my head. And I just started with a couple of character names and how one character would be related to another character. So I would write, so Maggie Franklin is the protagonist in this book. And so I had Maggie Franklin, and she is dating Liam Harrison. Originally in the book, Liam played in a band with his brother.
Yeah.
That's not how the book ended up, but that's where it started. And
right. Hey, write what you know, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it just started like connecting these little threads, connecting characters. And the next thing I knew, I had the page of like 20 characters, and I had all these lines drawn for how they were all related to each other. And then a story just began to unfold. I mean, I didn't plan anything out. I didn't have a plot. I didn't know where it was going. I didn't know what it was going to be about. Which I thought, I have to be, this has to be wrong. There's no way this is how people write a book, like not knowing what they're doing, or not knowing what they're doing, but not knowing what the story's about. And then I read Stephen King's book on writing, and he talks about how he doesn't write plots, and he sort of doesn't like the idea of plot. You think of plot. I mean, a plot can be a noun, so it's, what a story is about, but it can be a verb too. Like, I've plotted this, I've planned this out.
Right.
And he equated it to like being a scientist digging up a fossil, and you find one bone, and then you keep digging, and then you find another bone, and then you put those bones together, and then the story sort of reveals itself to you. And that's how this book was for me. I would just go in and I would write every day. I had myself on a schedule, and I would write every single day. I was maybe writing 1,000 words or so a day. And it's like, I couldn't wait to get back to my desk the next day to figure out, like, I was writing the book, but it was almost like a reader, where every day I would go back in and I can't wait to see what happens next, even though I'm the one that's writing it. But I didn't know what was going to happen next until I got in there and started writing. And it was exciting. It had the same kind of time stop that happens when you're writing a song or making a record. That same thing that happens to me with the guitar and with music was happening to me writing this book. And I just kept going. I didn't know where it was going. I didn't know how long it was going to be. I just sort of like, it's like I knew when it ended, obviously, but I didn't know I was writing a book. I certainly didn't know I was writing a novel. I was just connecting characters, and then the story started unfolding, and I just kept going and going and going. I mean, to tell you how much I didn't know what I was doing, I started the book using Google. Most people that write books write on Microsoft Word.
Yeah.
But I was using whatever the Word program is in Google, Google Docs. And I think I got about 20,000 words into the book. And every day it's like, it would take forever to load,
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, so then I just copied and pasted it all into Apple Pages. And then I thought, I'm just going to Google and figure out like what program, because growing up around music, I didn't work with Office programs, and,
right.
I know Pro Tools, and I know Logic.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Well, I'm old. So when I was in college, I was using a word processor.
Yeah.
So if you're writing a report or an essay, it's a digital word processor. So from college, then after that, I went on tour. And so there was nothing in between of like, you know, hey, this is Microsoft Word, or this is, I mean, I'd heard of them. I knew what they were, but
Sure.
I didn't use them. So that made things a lot easier when I was, you know, actually using a program that could handle the word load.
Yeah.
But it was exciting too, just the fact that I was just telling a story. I wasn't thinking about how it was supposed to be done or whether or not I was doing it the right way. It was only after I finished where I thought, there's no way this is how it could be done. But
Yeah.
and I mean, people write all different ways. There are people who plot it out, you know, and they know exactly where they're going to go, how the story's going to end. So I mean, it's just like making a record. There's no one way to do it. And I think having made records like that, doing a sort of a long form creative project, I was already accustomed to that, you know, like committing to something for a long period of time was already something that I was comfortable with. So, you know, some records you make fast, but other records, I mean, you know, sometimes they take months. I mean, this book took several years to write, but
so the book is titled The Twin Affair.
yes.
And Saturday, November 18th, you will be at Main Street Bookstore, right? In St. Charles, Missouri.
It's St. Charles. Yeah. From 1 to 3.
And is it just a signing, or are you going to do any kind of a reading or anything else?
I mean, I hope to do a reading. I typically, the way this particular bookstore operates is I think because the space is limited, they typically just do signings, but I'm certainly hoping to talk about it a little bit. And I'd like to read a couple of things, because one of the, I guess, themes of the book is identity and sort of who we are now versus the people we used to be, you know, and how much of our former selves are still kind of walking around with us. Like how much of me as a kid in St. Charles is still somewhere inside of me. So coming back to St. Charles and doing an event at this bookstore is kind of a full circle thing for a lot of what the book is about. So I'm hoping to get to talk about it a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, sounds cool, man. I'm excited about it. I'm going to try to be there and support and get my copy. And I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you.
I haven't done a whole lot of book signings, but maybe the last one I did, I bought. I'm a big stand-up comedy fan, also, and I bought Jim Gaffigan's book.
Cool.
Dad is Fat, and he I forget he did like a little Q&A kind of thing with somebody at this little theater, and it was just a really cool experience getting to sit there and listen to him talk about it a little bit, and then he signed our books for us, and so but yeah, so I don't, like I said, I'm not. It's not something I do a whole lot, but it's fun whenever you get the chance to, especially meeting the authors that are writing these books and stuff. And so that's going to be a fun day for sure.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Is this now, like, do you think this is something, you said it took a couple of years to finish it all up, but is this something you think you're going to continue? I mean, are you already thinking about maybe what the next idea, or is this
I mean, I'm writing a lot now. I just in September I started writing for American Songwriter, which is a music magazine here in Nashville, and so I'm writing essays for them. I mean, they're all music related, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm writing constantly. So yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like it's interesting because the book's called The Twin Affair, and there are these sort of parallel stories happening in the book,
Right.
where the Maggie Franklin, the main character, her boyfriend is a novelist, and he writes these Cold War era spy novels. And so this novel that he's written, events that are happening in the novel are also happening in real life with Maggie as well too. And so thinking about these kind of parallel lines in a sort of strange way, that's kind of how my life has turned out with music and books, because books are, telling stories was maybe beginning with the Motown stories with my dad.
Right.
And then writing songs. I mean, that's just telling stories. You're just putting it to music. It's like these two, like the book thing has sort of kind of been there over my shoulder, and then it finally caught up to music. So now I'm doing both.
Right.
So it's just kind of, but again, just like the book, I mean, I didn't plan it out.
All right.
If the pandemic doesn't happen, I don't know if I write the book. I don't know if I ever write a book. Because I don't know that if I ever would have forced myself to take the time to just stop everything else and just do that.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I even could have. But now that I've done it, I just fell in love with the process. So yeah, I mean, I'm constantly writing these days, and I mean, I'm not thinking about. I'm so focused on this book right now that I don't know what the future holds for
Sure.
another one, but
Yeah.
But I'm definitely writing constantly.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I mean, do you think about too, like the different, I mean, obviously you're already, you said it for the magazine and stuff, but like as far as like even auto or biographies or any, other forms of writing like that, does that cross your mind? Like,
I haven't thought about it.
Yeah. Because like, I mean, obviously this is being a novel and stuff, like, but I don't know if you had ever considered other formats of, for books and stuff, but yeah.
Not really. Like I said, I mean, well, it was always fiction though. I mean, even when I was younger, when I was, trying to write a book in college, it was fiction. So, which is interesting because writing these pieces for the magazine, of course, it's nonfiction. And so, I'm writing about different albums or different bands, different artists, or different kind of, like I have these pieces that I'm working on right now about Britpop.
Mm-hmm.
But not just about the band or the records, but also just a lot of what was going on politically and culturally with all of these scenes, and, in England, especially, there's like class consciousness is a big deal. And so this was showing up across how the bands would present themselves, what they were writing about, the types of audiences that would go to the shows, how they were marketed. So what's neat about music is, you've obviously a great song or great record that can be enough, but usually, especially behind really great records, there's usually this really interesting story that's much larger than music. And I think that's why a lot of songs and albums never go away. They're timeless because it doesn't matter what part of the world you live in. It doesn't matter what time period you live in. These are things that every generation just continues to struggle with.
Yeah.
It's why a lot of stories that we tell are the same stories over and over again, because we keep, whether it's struggling to pay your bills or raise a family. And then of course, in dire consequences, there's conflict and war and political adversity. But all of these things, we just keep telling the same stories over and over again. And the songs and the albums that really connect with people, it doesn't matter. You don't have to be from England in the 1990s to be able to feel something powerful happening in some of these records. You know, I think if you listen to Bittersweet Symphony and what Richard Ashcroft is singing about, you don't have to, that's not a 90s sentiment. You know, I mean, maybe the 90s part, maybe when he talks about the radio, and I don't know how much, you know, kids don't listen to the radio anymore, but you know what I mean? Like it's still, the radio could be just culture.
Right.
You know, the airwaves are clean and nobody's singing to me now. You know, it's just the sort of kind of pushing back on kind of commercialism and marketing and just whatever is constantly being shoved down our throats. I mean, in this day and age, you get on your phone and you can't go anywhere or look at any website without just hundreds of blinking ads. You know, you can't get away from it. And so I think those sentiments they're just timeless.
Yeah. I was thinking, you mentioning Bittersweet Symphony, and I saw a thing recently with is it Brandon from the Verve Pipe, right?
Yeah.
But that the freshman, right? That song.
Yeah.
He was talking about like people always like get their bands mixed up and like that, and he's asking him about writing that song. He's like, and he says that he, it's like a lot of times he got tired of correcting people that he didn't write the song, and he started taking like, yeah, that was a good one. That he wrote it and stuff. And it just made me laugh, like thinking about that. That people just still, all these years later can't tell the difference between, the Verve and the Verve Pipe. So,
yeah.
But I don't know. It just, it was on like TikTok or something. It just made me laugh.
Okay.
Like, and like, he's having a lot of fun with it. Like there's people like doing karaoke of the song, like the freshman, and like, he's like sitting in the bar and stuff. Like it just, stuff like that. This it just kind of makes me laugh that they're not even really aware of him at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
The guy who wrote the song is sitting right there. And
yeah.
So, anyway, but yeah, man, that's, I think that's kind of, the thing, like, obviously we celebrate a lot of these, great writers, and like you said, these themes keep coming back around. And you actually, you work with, one of those guys that I feel like is one of the greats, one of the most prolific writers, I feel like, of the, last several years for sure, but Will Hoge has become one of my favorites. I saw him in, 2010, I think it was, and I think I met him he went on tour with Shinedown on their acoustic tour. And I think that's the night we first met. So, but since then I've been able to see him in a bunch of different rooms, and I'm just a super fan. And you've been touring with Will for like, the last 8 years or so, right? Something like that.
About 6.5 years.
Oh, 6.5 years.
Well, I mean, so beginning in 2017,
yeah.
But I met Will in 2007 or 2008. So Lapush had just split up, and I had a friend that was a mutual friend with his manager. And he said Will was looking for a new guitarist to tour. So I drove to Nashville. I was still living in St. Louis at the time. I drove down to Nashville and met Will, auditioned, and got the gig. And then I got back to St. Louis, and we had a couple of phone calls just sort of plotting out. He was getting ready to make a record, and the record, it would be The Wreckage. It wasn't titled at the time, but that's the record that it would end up being.
Right.
And he said, I guess Bruce Springsteen was going to be involved on the album, and he invited me down to play on a couple of songs. And then he wanted, talk to me about being the guitar player for the tour. And then after a few phone calls, I just stopped hearing from him. And I didn't know what was going on. And then my wife read that he was in a motorcycle, or he was in an accident. He almost died.
Yeah.
He was in really, it was just a really terrible situation. His oldest son was just a little guy at the time, and it was just a really, really bad situation. But thankfully he pulled through.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it was, maybe a year and a half or 2 years later, he called back, and at that time I couldn't do it. I was already working on my first solo album and just was busy working on other things. So, that's like 2009, I think, at this point. And then I moved to Nashville in 2010. And then at the end of 2016, he reached out to me on Twitter, of all places, and said that he was making a new record. He didn't know I was living in Nashville because we never ran into each other down here. And said he was making a new record, and he wanted to put together a new band for the record. And he had this idea of wanting to bring in a guitar player that didn't come from the country world or the Americana world. And he was sort of talking about kind of Nels Cline's role in Wilco. He sort of had this kind of outsider musician within the band that has a very, that has a sound sort of in that kind of Americana world. Not that Wilco don't really sound like that anymore, but the early stuff was sort of kind of came out of that with Uncle Tupelo.
Yeah.
So, he brought me in, and the whole band were like all these crazy musicians here in Nashville, like some of the best players on the planet. So like Dominic John Davis, who plays with Jack White on bass, Fats Kaplan, who also plays with Jack White and then played with John Prine on pedal steel, fiddle. Jerry Rowe, who it seems every year wins the best drummer in Nashville. He plays on everybody's records. He's just an unbelievable drummer. Another guitar player named Brad Rice, who had played with Ryan Adams, Heartbreaker and Gold era, like Ryan's first two solo albums. So all these just really incredible musicians. Sheryl Crow's on that record. Brendan Benson from the Raconteurs is on that record.
Yeah.
So I was super intimidated, and I couldn't sleep the night before. I was so nervous. And, I told my wife, I said, they're probably going to send me home after 30 minutes, like this, we got to get this guy out of here. But it ended up going really well. And that album was Anchors.
Yeah.
Which came out in 2017, and it's a really, really great record. I'm really proud to have been a part of it. So then after that album was finished, we recorded that in January of 2017, and then he had a few shows on the books, and so I went out and did a handful of shows with him, and then I eventually, he put together a new touring band, and so from 2017, I just did my last run of shows with him just this past July. It was about 6.5 years. Obviously the pandemic is in the middle of all that. So for that year, we did a few studio things, but we weren't touring, in 2020.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been incredible. I've done 4 albums with Will. And then I've done a handful of records for other artists that he's produced, that he's brought his band in on. Toured all over the world with him. It's been it was a really great experience.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I'm a giant fan. I really he had me hooked at the beginning with I liked the songs a lot, but a line stood out that I met him at the merch table, and he goes, I went to go support and buy a record, and he goes, yeah, the CDs are 1 for 10 or 2 for 20. So, and I was like, and it was like, just that the sense of humor about it all. Like he just a very quick wit, and and that's what I always loved about his shows is like it's half comedy almost. Like he's the storytelling in there and mixed with comedy and the great music, and it's just very entertaining. And but yeah, a lot of fun for sure.
Yeah.
So I can imagine being on the road and being a part of that, it'd be a lot of fun. It was
definitely.
Yeah. So but through all that time and a lot of this we haven't mentioned yet, but you've been you write and record your own music. You alluded to the working on your solo record, and there's five solo albums.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And in April of this year, you released a brand new single, and let's Over the Sky.
We're standing on the edge in a broken down phone. You came walking in, told me to get reborn. But I wasn't looking for nothing anyone had to get. Luck had changed, did it change? Did it change, did it change? So tell me, are you hurt? Can you speak? Can you walk? You sleep on your side when your mind's on fire, on fire. I'm not gonna leave you out of fear, ain't that clear? Love won't change, it won't change. It won't change, it won't change. Love won't change, it won't change. It won't change, it won't change. Talk about youth, the good old days, those were the days. We don't look the same, but I still think you're beautiful. You know that feeling when you're high on a fast life. Love won't change, it won't change. It won't change, it won't change. It's not dark, it's not dark yet. There's still a spark in a whispering song. It's not dark, it's not dark yet. There's still a spark in a whispering song. Setting for the day. It looks the same in the backyard 100 miles away. I hope I don't burden you when you hear me say love won't change, it won't change. It won't change, it won't change. Love won't change, it won't change. It won't change, it won't change. It's not dark, it's not dark. There's still a spark in a whispering song. It's not dark, it's not dark, yeah. There's still a spark in a whispering song.
now readily available on all your streaming platforms.
Yeah.
But currently just a standalone single, right?
Yeah, because I put out the last album I put out was Timekeeper,
Right.
which was released in 2021. And then, and that was a little bit more, more of an acoustic album. And then Over the Sky came out in April. But I'm constantly writing and recording. I'm actually, I've been playing around with the Timekeeper album, and I found some alternate takes of that album. So at some point I have a reworked version of that I'm going to be putting out. But I also have a new band that I'm working on, called Telex Telex, and we've just finished a 4-song EP. So musically, that's the thing that I'm focused on the most right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So Telex Telex is kind of goes back to the early days a little bit too, right?
Lapush.
Yeah. So you're joining Casey, who was in the founding lineup of Lapush.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So how'd this come about?
So Casey was in Lapush in the earliest days, like 2003, 2004.
Yeah.
And she was just a kid at the time. And I think we hadn't signed our record deal yet, but things were getting pretty serious. So, she ended up not carrying on with us, but in the band, she was playing keyboards and singing backing vocals. And I don't know if you've ever heard Casey sing, but the fact that she was the backing singer in that band is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
She's just incredible. And I've always wanted to do something else with her over the years, but it just, everybody's busy and it just never happened. And I was working on a new batch of what I thought were going to be solo songs. And I wanted to bring in, a female vocalist to sing on some of these songs. And I was just looking around and thinking about people that I knew in Nashville, and sort of had this sound in my head, but I didn't know of anyone that really had that sound. And then my wife suggested, well, what about Casey? And well, that's a really good idea. And I went to her SoundCloud page, and she just had these little rough demos up on her SoundCloud. And it was the music, the ideas were just really incredible. And so I reached out to her, and again, it was just going to be her singing on some of my songs. But when she recorded the first one and sent it back to me, it immediately sounded like something.
Yeah.
This wasn't going to be my solo project featuring Casey Basil. Like it didn't seem right. And so I reached out to her and said, would you want to form a band? And she said, yeah. And I said, I think it should just be the two of us. It should just be a duo. And so we just started writing and recording and just passing files back and forth to each other. It's really good. I'm really, really excited about it. So we have a 4-song EP that's finished, and hopefully in the very near future, we're going to put the first song out, and hopefully start playing live. And very excited about it.
What kind of sounds do you think what do you have a certain vein of music that you're pursuing, or is it just whatever happens kind of thing? Like,
it's a little bit of whatever happens. I mean, the thing about, and it was this way with Lapush, the thing about having a band is almost, because it's the collection of people, it almost has a sound inherent
right
in the group, so like in Lapush, we didn't really, we knew what kind of bands we were into, but we didn't really sit around. My brother and I didn't sit around and say, like, we should sound like this.
Yeah.
Like, we knew the records we really loved. And of course it's going to be kind of a result of those influences. But when all of us got together in a room, it just had its own sound to it. And that's kind of how it is with Casey and I. I mean, there's, there are a lot of guitars, but then there's some electronic aspects, but then there's some sort of older kind of almost Phil Spector influences. But I guess it's rock, it's indie rock. I guess, if you had to put a name to it.
Right.
But it can kind of be out, I mean, sometimes she'll write something on the piano, or I'll write something on acoustic guitar, or I'll just start with a beat or a sound. I mean, it kind of happens. It kind of comes from every direction. But as soon as the two of us start, like as the thing starts forming and the two of us keep adding stuff to it, it just sounds like us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's some of my favorite stuff, man. That's my favorite. I like groups that, it's going back to Will. It's probably one of my favorite things about him is that he's made rock and roll records. He's made country records, Americana. He's got a lot of different styles and it's all, I think he even said one time at one of the shows, like what people ask what kind of music he plays, says he plays Will Hoge music. And that's, and that's why I always loved that line. Like it was, it's just, it just happens to be, this one kind of leans this way, but does make it, we might not be a rock band or whatever, or, we're just making music. So, and I think that's what's fun about it.
Yeah. I mean, even if you pull from an older sound, like Etta James, or, just talking about Phil Spector, it doesn't really sound like Phil Spector,
right.
But like, I mean, you could sort of draw the line.
You put your own lens on everything, so it's got it's coming through your own. But yeah, I'm excited, man. I'm here. It'd be fun to hear some new music, and hopefully we'll be hearing that soon.
Should be soon, and
maybe some shows coming soon. So
definitely, and I imagine we'll begin in St. Louis. I would imagine.
Yeah, and you can find. I know the socials popped up the other day. We got the. You can get plugged in on all the usual spaces, your Facebook and Instagram, right? And I think I think there's a Bandcamp placeholder ready to go for you when it goes.
Yeah, for Telex Telex. Yeah, and I think all the social media handles are we are Telex Telex. I think that's that's what they're called. But if you follow me, I'm going to be talking about it. So
sure.
You can get there through my Instagram.
Yeah. You can get plugged in with Thom on the socials as well, and find out more about the book. Do you think do you think the book you'll be doing more? You're trying to do more signings too with this also?
Yeah.
Like you're trying to get out?
Yeah, would like to. I mean, we did a private event in Nashville the week before the book came out. But we're working on a public event in Nashville, and maybe a few other cities too. So I want to get out as much as I can. And it's available. I mean, it's available at all of, any indie store. And if the indie store in your city doesn't have the book on its shelves, they can order it for you. And I don't know if you're familiar with this website, but, there's actually, I'm going to make sure I have the right name. If you go to bookshop.org, do you know that website?
I'm not familiar, no.
Okay. So think of it like Amazon or Barnes and Noble, but it's for indie bookstores.
Okay.
So you can order online at bookshop.org. And like whatever city you live in, like if you were in St. Louis and you wanted to order from Left Bank Books, I mean, obviously you could just go to their website and order from them. But you could also do it through bookshop.org. And it's a way where you can support indie bookstores, or even if you don't even know what your indie bookstore is, but you just want to support it, you can plug in your city and they'll give you a list of stores, and you could just order it right there. So it's like the Amazon of the indie shops,
Yeah. Nice.
which is pretty cool. But it's at Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all the big places too.
Mhm.
And
I've done a little bit of that with
this is the book here.
Yeah. I've done a little bit of that
That's
with records. Like it's nice when you can you order a vinyl and it'll tell you like you can order it from Vintage Vinyl or Euclid or whatever, all the different so that's always neat to be able to directly support your independent record stores here and stuff, or bookstores, and like, that's the way you should be. You should get out and support them, keeping them alive.
Well, it's great because then you have, I mean, even just like the event that we're doing in St. Charles, those indie stores are doing things like that.
Right.
And it's just a great way to, not just to meet the author, but even just bringing a community of readers together. And typically the people running those bookstores tend to be really helpful. I mean, it's like the person at the record store where, you could go in, and even if you're not really sure what you're looking for, you can get some sort of recommendation from someone that you trust. And so, I love a bookstore. I could spend hours in a bookstore. We have a really great one here in Nashville at Parnassus, called Parnassus. Yeah, so if you can support an indie bookstore, it's always helpful. But I mean, also, I understand the ease of Amazon and Barnes and Noble, and just like I understand the ease of going to Spotify and pressing play. And so, for me, I just hope people check the book out. And so, however people want to get it, I'm okay with.
You ever think about doing like a audiobook version of it, reading it or anything?
Well, I mean, I haven't done an audiobook for this. I thought about it. I don't know if I will or not. I'm not sure. I mean, I can do it in the studio, but I mean, that seems like a massive project.
Yeah. All right. I just heard Arnold Schwarzenegger talking about reading his book. And like he's talking about how how difficult it was, just because it's not always how you speak. You as it's written, and so he's like trying to read it, and and it's just like so it's funny hearing him, like, especially with the his accent and stuff, just hearing him like get frustrated with himself that he, reading these words and stuff. So, but yeah, I can imagine that'd be quite the process trying to, especially doing your own book and stuff like. Yeah. But,
I think I'd almost rather have somebody else. Do the reading.
Morgan Freeman, maybe.
Well, the other thing is, the main character, Maggie's a female. And so I almost think a woman should read the story.
Yeah. All right.
Because so much of it is from her perspective. And I mean, I'm not trying to skirt the work, I'm not trying to get out of the work, but.
All right. Yeah. If you had a, just a dream, who would you like to hear reading it? Who do you think would be a good?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe, I have no idea.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd have to think about that.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I just said it'd be kind of fun, something, another thing to continue to promote this book and stuff. But, yeah, I don't know. I just think I haven't really got into that, but I know, like, just like podcasting, that Audible and a lot, there's a big market in these audiobooks and stuff too. So
yeah, I mean, a lot of people, you know what? I do know of someone.
You got one?
Yes. Emma Stone.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just thinking of she's in that movie with Ryan Gosling, La La Land.
Yeah.
Yeah, Emma Stone.
Nice. Yeah.
I think she should read it.
Yeah. Hey, I'll tag her when I post this, and we'll see if she's available.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So you what about if they want like a personalized copy? Are you signing other than the event? Are you selling them through the website or anything like that where we can get a personalized copy?
The personalized copies will only be at the events.
Right.
So, and I mean, you can go to my website and order the book, but it's all coming from a
distributor,
a store.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, to get it signed, that's all going to happen at the events.
Okay.
So, if you're in the St. Louis area, we would love to see you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, come on out again Saturday, November 18th, 1 to 3, Main Street Books, St. Charles, Missouri. Yeah, I'm excited about this. It's gonna be a fun day. And so when you're coming home, do you have like something you really look forward to, or a spot to eat, or visit?
Yeah, the food for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I still do. I'll still order emos
right
when I come home. I like Stefanina's too, though. That's good pizza.
Yeah, I worked at Stefanina's.
Really good pizza.
Yeah, I worked there like probably 18 or something like that.
Yeah,
somewhere around there.
So yeah, we'll do pizza. My son loves emos, so we'll definitely do that. And we usually go down. My wife and I, after we lived in the Central West End, we lived on the Hill. And so we'll always do the Hill. And obviously there's incredible food down there too. And it's just a bunch of stuff that's really bad for you.
Right.
But we go and we do it anyway. Missouri Baking Company is down on the Hill, which, has some pretty delicious cookies. Great sandwiches down there.
Yeah.
I miss seeing the Cardinals. I haven't been to a Cardinals game in years.
Mm-hmm.
So I really miss going to a Cardinals game. Although they were not very good this year. So
yeah,
maybe it was okay that I didn't go this year.
Yeah, all right. I went to a game not too long ago. I forget towards the end of the season there, September or something. But Lucas Nelson was in town playing at Del Mar Hall. And I don't think Lucas was there, but the rest of the band, Promise of the Real, all of them went to the game, and they put them up on the screen and stuff. And I was just like, I just thought that was cool that they had the off night in town and they went to the Cardinal game. So it was, just cool to see that other people coming to support the city and stuff that way.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, obviously growing up in St. Louis, I love the Cardinals. I watch them on TV all the time. Went to the games all the time, went to the Old Busch Stadium. Saw the Mark McGuire years, and of course, Albert and Yachty. And then, back in the day, just with Ozzie Smith and Willie McGee.
Yeah.
It was just, the Cardinals were always, have always consistently been a competitive team. No matter what's going on in the season, the stadium is always packed.
Yeah.
So it's just a really fun atmosphere down there. So I miss it.
Yeah.
I'll have to get back.
Yeah, for sure. What, you mentioned your son, is he getting into music or?
Well, he loves music.
Yeah.
I mean, I taught him the guitar, and we mess around in the studio. He likes to make beats. He loves
Yeah.
electronic music. He's a gamer, so
All right.
any sort of music that is in his gaming world, he's a big fan of.
Yeah.
But he's an actor. That's kind of his main thing.
Yeah.
But he's a great storyteller himself. He's always coming up with characters and stories, and around the dinner table, we always improvise stories with each other, with Julian and my wife, Madeline. But yeah, he's fun.
Yeah.
Super fun.
Yeah. I didn't know, if he, I think that's, it's kind of can go either way. You never really know how they're going to take to it, if they're going to want to pursue it like that, or if they want to pave their own way. And
yeah.
I think it's always great when they find whatever it is that they're passionate about, whether acting, like you said, or whatever it might be. But it's just exciting when they start finding their own, whatever the way they want to express themselves that way.
Absolutely. It's just amazing to watch, I mean, even with acting, because that's not a world that I come from, but just watching him sort of transform himself into a character it's really just incredible to see. He has this kind of, it's just an instinct. I mean, he takes acting classes too, and obviously that's helpful. But there's something that is just inside of him. I mean, he has these sort of. I mean, you see it with music too, with different people. Like there are certain qualities that you just can't teach. You can show someone an instrument, but there's something to certain musicians. Like, I was talking to someone about this the other day, about the guitar is a really instrument to learn how to play. You can learn a guitar quickly, but it's really, really difficult to play the guitar well. Like the learning curve is quick, and you could put a few chords together and you could play some songs and you could get going on it. But to go from that to playing it really well is really, really hard to do. And I don't, there's an aspect of it that I don't know is teachable. And he has that with acting, and and I know, of course, I'm going to be blown away by whatever he does because I'm his dad, but it's just really, really impressive to watch.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes my wife and I would just look at each other if we're watching a video of a performance, or even when he's right there, and like sometimes we'll tape auditions for him. And, in some of these roles, it's a pretty intense scene, and you're watching your child transform just a few feet in front of you. It's really incredible to watch.
Yeah. I've been thinking about it for a little while. It's been on my mind, but talking about, also I thought about it earlier when you mentioned your dad, being a DJ and in music and stuff, and supporting you entering music and at a young age. And,
Mm-hmm.
and then, now with, this conversation, I just recently saw this comedian, Andrew Scholes. I don't know if you're familiar with him at all, but
No.
but he's doing big things now, and but I follow him on Instagram, and he posted a video, and man, it got me right in the feels. Like it was he's a New York guy, and he brought his dad to Madison Square Gardens, and it's just the two of them standing in center court there, and he's telling them like that he says that when he started comedy, he said he always had this dream of playing at Madison Square Gardens and headlining, and he said that most of the people that he ever said that to laughed at him and thought that blew it off, and he said, but his dad said, I'll see you there. And he said that,
Wow.
you know, it was like, I said, like, that meant the world to me that you were there to support me through this, you know, the whole process, and you believed in me. And then he goes, so I brought you here today to tell you that when my tour comes to New York City, I'm headlining Madison Square Gardens, and I want you to be there. So so I was just like a super, you know, cool moment to be able to share that with his
Yeah.
dad, you know, just like I said, really I got choked up, man. It was like, it was
Oh
just
yeah.
it's a beautiful moment, whether, you know, for if you know his story or not or anything, but just like, it's just a cool thing to a small town, you know, or not small town, but a kid starting off in New York and had the dream, and now he's making it happen. And
It's incredible.
he sold out Madison Square Gardens in 2 hours, and they announced a second show, and I was just like,
Wow.
it's pretty impressive.
It is.
But yeah, so hopefully, you know, I would hopefully that you'll have a similar, you know, thing. I don't know if, I just think that was really neat to be able to have, you know, I'm not a father, but, you know, like, I think about my dad, and, you know, got me into music the same way, you know,
Mhm.
so, listening to his records and things. And so I would, it made me want to, you know, I don't know that it's not going to be, you know, Madison Square Gardens level, but I don't know what that moment would be for me, but it'd be cool to have that moment with my dad, you know, to pass that on like that. So,
Yeah. I mean, my my dad passed away in 2006,
yeah,
and you know, so he never met my son, and you know, but of course, I think about him all the time, and just different things that now that I'm a father, and different experiences that I have with Julian, I'll think back to, I'll just picture different moments with my dad. And of course, when I'm thinking back to being a child, I'm always looking up at him.
right.
You know, I mean, you look up to your father, but you literally look up to them too. And and you know, I think about different moments with Julian, or different moments, you know, that I've had here in Nashville with music. I mean, my dad would have loved to drive down to Nashville. He wouldn't have been happy that I moved away from home,
Yeah.
but I think he would have loved coming down here and exploring the city. I mean, he loved music, and you know, if it wasn't for him, not just with music, but also telling stories, those Motown stories, like I don't know that I have the life that I have if it wasn't for him. You know,
Yeah.
because that was so impactful at a young age. You know, to just be a kid and sitting around, and you know, like, music wasn't a passive activity in our house. You know, it wasn't, you don't put a record on and then go do something else while the record plays in the background. The record, that's the activity.
Yeah.
So we would all sit in front of his stereo system. All the records would be splayed across the floor. And I'm just looking at all the album jackets. And of course, it's all vinyl. So it's like you are reading all the credits, and, you know, and just listening. And then he would point out different things in the song, like, listen when this vocal happens here, or the sound of the strings. You know, listening to I Hear Symphony by Diana Ross and the Supremes, and listen to the strings on the track. And you know, it was just it was so impactful, and it changed. He didn't know he was doing that. You know, he loved music and
Right.
loved sharing it with his family, but for me, it changed everything. It made me feel something that nothing else in my life made me feel that way.
Yeah.
And that hasn't gone away. And even after, you know, being in the music business for as long as I have, and I haven't lost that sort of kind of childlike wonder of music. Like I still get just blown away by a song or a guitar player. I remember before the pandemic, I was playing guitar for a good friend of mine here in Nashville named Ruby Amanfu, she sang on my single Shipwreck. And we were in the Dominican Republic playing with John Prine. And I remember sitting on the side of the stage watching him perform. And I couldn't believe it's, I couldn't believe what I was seeing and what I was hearing, that these songs, this guy is just full of song, or he was full of songs and full of stories, and being able to just watch that close I felt like a child again. I was so excited to be there. I was so moved by his music and his songs. And it was just an incredible experience. I'm grateful that I haven't lost that side of it. I'm still curious. I still pick up my guitar and try to figure out new things or try to find new sounds. And I'm grateful that hasn't gone away.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you, man. I love this stuff. I love music, and I'm always, I love the idea, never knowing what you're going to find. Like, I love going to shows and discovering new artists all the time, and or grabbing a new record and hitting play and hearing, just going for the ride and like seeing where this record's going to take me. And, those kind of things, like, it's just, so very much that same excitement and curiosity, like you're saying, about just like the first time I heard these records from these. So still chasing it.
Yeah.
I kind of laughed. That's a funny sentence though to me, like that. That you're saying you're in the Dominican Republic with John Prine. Like, it's just that's a pretty wild thing to think about. Just that being got to experience that. That obviously you've been able to do a lot of really amazing things in your career, but just like that's just a funny sentence to me to think about, like that. It's just that music led you to that point. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, well, and that sort of, it was surreal for sure.
For sure.
It absolutely was. And the whole festival, Brandy Carlisle was there, Emmylou Harris, Lucinda Williams, Steve Earle, Tyler Childers. It was incredible. And then the finale was everybody, all the artists that I just mentioned would walk on stage and they would each do a John Prine song.
Oh, very cool.
And John was just sitting in a chair off the side of the stage, just watching all these people sing his songs. And Ruby, who I was playing with, did Angel from Montgomery.
Oh, nice.
And it was just it was really a profound experience. And that's that acoustic album, Timekeeper, that whole experience with John inspired Timekeeper. And I have a gift from him hanging on the wall over there in the studio. He gave us all this bolo tie with his initials on it. And he drove around in a golf cart with his wife and hand delivered this to all the musicians.
Yeah.
So he was such a cool guy, such a sweet man. But it was definitely one of the highlights of my life in music, for sure.
Yeah. Do you have a moment in mind when, like, do you think about the highlight reel, of your life, like your like proudest moment, the music so far? Like, is it
Mm.
you know, or even the book, or any of your professional career so far?
Well, I mean, when Lapush played on the Carson Daly show, that was a big moment for us,
Yeah.
you know, because just being in a like starting in a room with a group of friends and writing songs, like the idea that you'd go from there to playing on a late night show on TV was, especially coming out of St. Louis, because I mean, we didn't grow up in New York City or Los Angeles or Nashville,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and bands would get signed and, you know, but it wasn't such a regular thing,
Right.
you know, because it wasn't like you know, you're not living in a music city or an entertainment city. So that was really, I mean, that was a special moment, you know, and then obviously the John Prine moment. There was another time where I played guitar for Ruby, and also Brandy Carlisle, and my wife was in the crowd at that show, and I told her after I got off stage, like I felt like I was floating. Like there are two voices. I've never heard two voices that beautiful in my life. You know, I mean, I couldn't believe what I was hearing, and they're just beautiful, beautiful voices. So that's definitely was a highlight too.
Yeah.
And the book.
Yeah.
I'm really proud of this book. It's the hardest thing I've ever done.
Yeah. What?
Because no one can help you with a book.
Right.
You know, like I'm not saying making a record is easy, because it's not, but I mean, typically you have some people helping you out.
Right.
You know, but I'm really proud of this book. I think it's a really good story. I think, like, you know, thematically, there are the themes of identity. It's also looking at sort of how frail democracy is and things that are happening with authoritarianism and Western governments. There's all of that sort of thematic kind of big picture stuff, but then it's also just kind of just a really good story too. And I think it's, you know, there's an international crime scheme. There's a little bit of murder. You know, I think it has it has something for everyone in this book.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm trying to get to my charger. I just got an alert. My laptop's about to die, so I didn't want to.
Oh no!
I didn't want to lose everything, so I'm still listening. I just
okay.
I apologize. I should have had this already done.
No, you.
All right, we're back.
All right.
But yeah, Thom, this has been incredible, man. I really enjoy this chat. I appreciate you being so generous with your time and hanging with me.
Thank you for having me.
This
of course, yeah.
You again, you can find the book. What was the website again? For the independent stores.
Well, if you go to my website, ThomDonovan.com.
That'll lead you there.
Yeah, all of those stores are listed. I have links to all of those places. So bookshop.org is where you can order from indie shops. And of course, you could also just go into your local indie shop, and if they don't have it on the shelves, you can order it too. But it's available, everywhere that you can buy a book.
Mm-hmm.
And it's on Goodreads as well too, for readers that are on Goodreads. It always helps to leave comments and ratings and all of that stuff. That's especially on a place like Goodreads, it's always very helpful.
Yeah.
And then of course in St. Charles, November 18th.
Yeah.
Main Street Books from 1 to 3. I'll be there. Main Street will be selling the book. I'll be signing the book and hopefully talking a little bit about it too.
Yeah. Well, very cool. Yeah, man, I appreciate you doing this, and hopefully we
Thank you for having me.
Hopefully we can do something again soon, man. This was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Thom. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Goodbye.